Well, today's guest is someone who's made a meaningful impact in the world of business and leadership, especially when it comes to supporting women on their journey from agent to CEO. Hilary Saunders brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table, and her work has helped countless women step into higher levels of ownership, strategy, and success. She has a sharp understanding of what it really takes to build a business and a life that aligns with your bigger vision. And I am so excited to dig into all the insights she's going to unpack for us today. Hilary, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Those are very, very kind words, Stacey. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, you are so welcome. I want to start off and ask you, you have worn so many hats in your career. Obviously, take us back to the beginning. What first drew you into the world of real estate?
Good question. How do any of us get into real estate? I don't know. Um, for me, I was in the middle of, actually, I was my first year in law school. Um, I won't date myself, but it feels like eons ago. It was just it was interesting economic time coming out of undergrad. The job market wasn't really all that great. And so I was like, okay, I'll go to law school. At least it'll give me a really good foundation that I can parlay into a whole host of different things.
Mhm.
Um, Hindsight is always 2020. Like, I'm addicted to medical shows. Like, maybe I should have gone to medical school, but I that would have been a very different experience. Anyway, I was in my first year of law school and I took this property class, and my professor was so interesting because he was not only an attorney in the space of real estate in San Francisco, but also a landlord, and he also defended tenants. So he had this really interesting perspective as far as limitations in certain areas for home ownership and investing, but he had made a name and a very good portfolio for himself investing outside of certain jurisdictions. So
Mhm.
for me, I was like, oh, well, that's fascinating. So I went into real estate and tax law and was able to work with clients that way, and learned real fast in San Francisco that litigation wasn't my strong suit, or
Mm.
I was good at it, but I didn't like it. Like, my
Mhm.
soul felt just empty and void. And the things that people were arguing over and how evil they were to each other
Mhm.
was just not something that I could sleep at night.
Yeah.
Um, I found myself not wanting to go to work at all. So
That's the
that's
problem. That's the problem.
alarm bell number one, red flag. If you really feel like you need to feign an illness to get out of work, you're probably in the wrong line of work. Just
Mhm.
say that. And
Mhm.
so I pivoted and I went into selling real estate because I was really good at negotiation, and I was really good, and I really liked getting people into solving problems. So, in the Bay Area, it was really hard for first time buyers, even back then. Like, I
Mhm.
had people come to me and they're like, hey, we both make really good salaries, but I don't think that we could beat, a seasoned investor, cash buyer, blah, what, give me any reason that I can't
Right.
get this house. And
Right.
so I found a niche, and it was really utilizing my skill set, which was unique, to craft offers that were very advantageous for both parties and get them across the finish line. And then I said, "Ooh, interesting. What if I can do the same thing for folks in probate and estate planning who are faced with this situation where either you inherit a house, or a relative dies but you don't live there, and there's so many pitfalls, so many scams, so many everything that can just take your inheritance, and it could be a very little amount, and evaporate it." So
Right.
I built a following and a client base in that particular sphere. And then, because I was at a traditional real estate brokerage at the time, I was getting frustrated with the corporate, let's call it, imposition of their branding, their requirements. You
Mhm.
need to do it this way to be a part of our company. You need to build our brand. And they were capitalizing on me and my success, and they were reaping the benefits.
Mhm.
So I thought, huh, I've got a background in legal stuff. I can open up a shop. So I left and I opened up my law firm and real estate practice at the same time and was extremely comfortable in doing so.
Mm.
But it was really interesting because then you kind of like catapult a handful of years into why and how we started Side. I noticed that I was only one of five um, people who had left traditional brokerages at that time in all of San Francisco to open up their own shops.
Wow.
So it was a big what is lacking here question mark
Mhm.
in this
Mhm.
industry that prohibits people like me who have a niche, who have a unique flair, what prevents them from competing against the traditional brokerages?
Mhm.
Um, and that was about the same time I think that Shopify was coming online and Etsy had been around for a little bit, but there was a clear need in the consumer base and the public for people to be entrepreneurs, but they didn't have the base on which to stand, right? So that was kind of like an aha moment as well.
So cool. I have so many questions. Um, when when you decided to step away from your traditional real estate brokerage and open up shop on your own, um, obviously there was quite a gap you were seeing between was um, what was what your broker wanted you to do and what you felt like was going to be best for you in the long run. I'm curious about your mindset during that particular time because that's a very bold move for many people to step away from something secure. Talk to us a little bit about how you came to that decision and what factors you thought through in order to ultimately step away.
That's a really very impactful question. um, what's interesting? I have to step farther back because I've realized over the last couple years that not everybody has the inherent, like, oh, I can do anything attitude. It's something
Mhm,
that you are either, I can't figure this out because I have twin 5-year olds and they're starting to exhibit it. So I'm not quite sure if it's you're born with it or if it's the environment in which you grow up in because I remember from a very young age starting in like 3rd grade is when I can distinctly pinpoint it that I can
mm,
accomplish anything I want. Like I can get great grades if I choose to. I was a competitive swimmer, so I can achieve certain milestones and championships if I want to, if I work hard enough. I can build stuff. My dad taught me like you don't need to have the perfect tool to build something. Like look around you. What can you use to make whatever it is or fix whatever it is you're doing? So,
mhm,
to answer your question in a roundabout way, I knew that financially I would be okay because I had my entire life been able to have a credit card and pay it off every month. I
mhm,
made it work somehow, some way, whether it was, bootstrapping, selling clothes online, doing something. I was
mhm,
never in financial hardship. So, worst case scenario, I fall flat on my face. I can always go back to either a law firm or a real estate brokerage and do it traditionally. But if I don't try it this way, I'm I'm always going to be left wondering why can't I do it? And
mhm,
I found inspiration, quite frankly, I'm very competitive. So I was looking around the office and I saw about 3 or 4 top producers. They had the corner offices, with the windows. And the
mhm.
rest of us peons were in like the middle pit, if you will. It was an old converted bank building. So think of big square and you've got the big corner
Mhm,
offices with all the fancy things.
mhm.
And then the rest of
You're
us
in the
had little
bullpen.
desks. Yes.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
I was like, if those 4 people can't do it and I can, ooh,
Mhm.
yeah, this is so that's kind of what really motivated me, quite
I love
frankly.
that.
Um,
There's nothing wrong with
yeah,
being competitive. I wanna
yeah.
go back to, whether you were born with it or perhaps that confidence came from, um, a byproduct of your environment. It sounds like your dad was someone who instilled great confidence in you. I'm really intrigued by the fact that you knew at such a young age that, hey, I can do anything I put my mind to. Did your dad ever tell you that specifically? Do you remember?
I'm sure both my parents did. My mom was at that point was teaching in the school system as well. So there was
Mhm.
always a need to kind of like, oh, I can show you that I can do this
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But there was, I think it was my dad was Air Force. So
Okay.
he was always pushing for me to to go into the Air Force, which to his chagrin, I didn't. Uh, but I think it was that just drive of you can just try it. Like, what's the worst
Try
that's
it.
gonna happen? You can research it. You can look at the information. You can build a team around you, and you guys can work it together. But I had the same group of friends growing up from basically first grade through graduation because we live in a small town,
Mhm.
and our friend circle was extremely competitive together. So we all wanted
Mm.
perfect grades, and we all were kind of pushing each other. And
Yeah.
there was never an instance where, like, in education that we couldn't figure it out. So
Right.
we were given a lot of autonomy by the school system, by the teachers to try things. Like, it was
Mhm.
never, "You have to do it this way." If we had a reason to say, "Hey, we'd like to try this experiment this other way," we were
Mhm.
always allowed to do it. And then it would come back, "Did it work? Why did it work? Did it fail? Why did it fail? What would you do different?" So I think that vision
Mhm.
of thinking outside the box came
Mhm.
really early.
That's amazing. So often our belief system is a byproduct of our environment, especially when we're young children. And it sounds as if you were in a wonderful place as a young child because you had parents that were instilling confidence in you. You were surrounded with a community of other young folks who were equally as competitive. And it also sounds like your school system and your educators really taught creativity and creative out of the box thinking. That's not the norm for so many people. So I love that. And I
And
wish
that
that
blows the fact that you said that it's not the norm, just my mind is boggled for people to say that. And it's interesting because my husband and I have this conversation quite frequently. It comes back because he grew up in Seattle, was part
Mhm,
of the Seattle public school system, extremely large, less way less control. Like,
mhm.
it's kind of, I mean, his experience is like on the opposite end of the spectrum. And for him, it's like, well, no, I have to do it the way they tell me to do it.
Right.
It's like, oh, no, no, no. Let's
That's
have a
tough,
chat
honey.
here.
Yeah.
Like, you do not need 10 tools to build this thing. We've got 5 tools and they work
Right.
just fine. Just figure it out.
Right. Well, and I think too, a lot of times I coach female entrepreneurs on scaling their business and mastering their mindset. And their belief system is such an important part of scaling their business, right? And just going back to the topic of, are you born with it or is it a product of your environment? Think about all the things that were in place for you in a positive way, which I think again is so phenomenal. And think about all of those folks who didn't have that growing up. I guess where I'm going is it can absolutely be developed. If your belief system is one from your childhood that didn't teach you to think outside the box and didn't teach you confidence and didn't teach you creativity, you can absolutely program your mind with new things as an adult, right?
100%. And to piggyback on that, I think one of the most important things that anyone can do to scale their business is be honest with yourself regarding what it is that one, you like to do, and two, what's income producing for you, and
Mhm.
let go of every other task and outsource it. So you
Mhm.
need to, I was having this conversation with a friend yesterday, and he was saying that, he's he's trying to grow his business, but in his mind, he has to do everything. He has to do the bookkeeping. He has to do, everything. And that one, he doesn't like bookkeeping. Two, he's not good at it. I'm not good at it. That
Right.
was the first thing I
I
raised my
hate it.
hand to outsource. But nobody realizes that that is a good thing to let go of those things because your time is better spent where your secret sauce is. If
Yeah.
you're the creative, go create. If
Yeah.
you're the if you are the, serial entrepreneur and need to go get clients, go in front of the clients. You shouldn't be spending 8 hours a month on QuickBooks.
Right.
Hire somebody else.
Right. I often see people to that point with the belief that, oh, well, I'll eventually outsource it. I'm just going to learn to do it first. And then once I know enough, then I'll outsource it. Now, personally, I don't subscribe to that because I think it's incredibly inefficient. I don't need to learn bookkeeping. I need to know what questions to ask. I need to know what things I should be looking for in my financials, but I don't need to learn the ins and outs of bookkeeping. I'm curious if you also encounter entrepreneurs that have beliefs that they also need to learn something before outsourcing, and what would you say to them?
I have I have an accounting minor. I have a master's in law and tax. I know numbers. I can't run QuickBooks if you hung $1 million in front of me. My brain does not operate that way. I thought when I started my business, I'm going to hire someone to show me how to do it. Easy. Paid her for 6 hours of her time. Great woman. Blah 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 blah. To me, at the end of that, I can tell you it was green. Like
Yeah.
that's it. So
And I recognize the sound. It has like a little doo-doo, when
yeah,
you
it's
classify something doo-doo.
oh god, it was. At that point, I realized my $20 an hour or whatever it is, you can hire a VA in the Philippines for
Mhm,
$10 an hour.
mhm.
Way better economic return to do that. You need to be able to read it, what they give you.
Yeah.
So I think from my perspective, I think you need to know the purpose of the task. What is the preferred outcome? What
Mhm,
should it return? And then from there, you can step back. Like you need to know what the goal is for, sending mailers. If you're a realtor and you send, 100 postcards a month, what is the return on investment that you're expecting? You need to be able to sit down every 6 months to see if it's working. And then you need to be able to determine, use your brain, if that works, great. Why is it not working? And then pivot. So
mhm,
I don't think you need to know how the sausage is made. You need to know the flavors that are available and
mhm.
how, what's the intended return for it.
Amen. Amen. Love that. I want to go back to shifting from a real estate agent to putting up shop and owning your own brokerage. What are some common misconceptions entrepreneurs or maybe future entrepreneurs might have about making that shift?
One big misconception or misunderstanding or self-realization, I think would be the best term is, are you truly happy being a business owner or just a participant? Because either is fine. But you need to be true to yourself, meaning selling real estate is almost like a high. You get into
Mhm,
contract, you get it closed, you go on to the next deal. And that is very different from operating a successful business, which includes leadership, motivation,
mhm,
seeing where you can grow your market share, seeing what needs, making those executive decisions.
mhm,
If you need to decide what makes you happy. And
mhm,
that is the misconception. Every independent contractor, and I use air quotes because technically realtors are independent contractors, think they run their own business. They think they're the CEOs of their own business, but in reality, they're not. They're
mhm,
just sales folks.
mhm,
So
mhm,
the ones that really want to put their brand out there for a reason, impact
mhm,
their community in a certain way that they can describe, those are the folks that need to be the CEOs and start their own businesses. Everybody else should support them, find the right leader that you are excited by, right? That you fall in lockstep with their thinking and their motivation and then participate. But that's
Mhm.
the misconception that I see. I think that's about 10, maybe 15% of realtors really should be the CEOs of their own brokerages.
Interesting. Super interesting. And out of the CEOs that you're working with, obviously with hundreds of different brokerages everywhere, the ones that rise to the top, what are some of the trends that you see among those top performing brokerages?
I think they lead by example, meaning they keep their fingers in the transactions. They understand what the market's doing, but that's not their primary focus. Their primary focus is building their companies, their teams, and figuring out what leadership style they are, and then how do they impact the rest of the folks on their team.
Mhm.
Meaning, when your goal shifts from hitting your own gross commission income to say, how many people can I teach how to make $1 million?
Mhm.
When that mindset shifts, that's when
Mhm.
you become really successful because you're pouring yourself into others and now they are lifting you up. So
Mhm.
it's a really interesting dynamic that I think a lot of people, it takes time to kind of formulate that, but the ones that are very successful, they see the end result as how many families can we help get into housing? How many
Mhm.
folks can we help move on their journey? Because these are the biggest transactions of, I would say, almost everybody. There's the
Yep.
few that, whatever. Uh, the few 1% that's not the case. But
Right.
for almost every client, this is the largest investment of their lives. And
Mhm.
those, when it's seen that way, those are the ones who are extremely successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love what you said about developing their people, right? As leaders, again, I think it's very easy for someone to even get into operator mode when you're a CEO. You're just, going through the motions. But when we're proactively thinking about developing our people and leaning into what type of work lights them up, how can I make this person who I see even greater potential in, how can I help them blossom even more? I think that's a mark of a great leader for sure.
One of the most interesting things that came out of a conversation not too long ago, we were talking about how to effectively hire virtual assistants.
Mhm.
And traditionally speaking, the mindset or the instruction would be like, here, do these tasks, mostly the tasks that I don't want to do.
Mhm.
But somebody brought up, they said the most success that we've had with our virtual assistant is we start out by asking them what they like to do, what gets them excited, and then we give them that job
Yep.
versus I give you a job to do,
Yeah.
because then that person will work twice as hard and they will enjoy it and the work product will be twice as good.
Yeah.
So that is an interesting way, because when we hire people, you write a job description, right? And then you hire against it.
Yep.
Well, why not reverse it, engineer it, look for talented people, figure out where their talents are, and then do they fit into your organization? And if
Yeah.
they don't, they don't. It's okay, but don't try and fit them to
Yeah.
your box.
Amen. It's funny. I just made a hire like that recently, and someone close to me was telling me I was doing it all wrong, that I needed to create the job description first. And I was like, maybe, maybe. However, this person has very unique skills that can bring tremendous value to my business. So I'm going to shape something around what lights them up, because
Yeah,
at the end of the day, it's going to be a win win, right?
right,
And that doesn't
right.
really fit very well in the traditional hiring process. The other thing that I'm really passionate about and coach my students on is hiring by values, and making sure you have your own core values identified and make that a part of your interview process, right? Make sure that you're getting examples of how any candidate is either aligned or not aligned, or can provide examples of, how they have made your core values come to life in their own previous work history or in their lives. I think that skills can be taught and enhancing skills can be taught, but if we don't have people that align with our values, that's the problem.
It is. It is. And it's not values in the like political sense, right?
Oh, right.
But it's values in like, for example, real estate. I'm a very true believer in boutique, like the future is boutique, hyper local, hyper focused on community. Those are the people who are giving back to that local community, who are there when you need help. They're the ones who will come and, the storm hits and they're literally in your front yard helping you clean up whatever's
Mhm.
been blown down.
Mhm.
So I think it's such a relationship business in real estate that
Mhm.
that parlays also into whatever other business you're trying to build. And
Yeah.
if you put the folks around you who, like you said, share those same values, you'll all lift each other up. When times are
Yeah.
tough, you guys will rally. And when times are great, you will all flourish.
Amen. Amen. All right. I want to also ask you about efficiency, because I feel like as entrepreneurs, it's so critical to operate your business in the most efficient and effective way possible. I want to talk about Side for a hot minute and just talk talk to us a little bit about how the platform can enhance efficiency and effectiveness for its brokerages.
Yeah, for sure. So Um, just kind of stepping back when I was saying similar to Shopify, right? You've got a bunch of entrepreneurs that have their different businesses, and the platform, as we call it, provides back end support. So all the non-sexy things that are required to run a successful brokerage are things that
Mhm.
either we have built ourselves, technology, or plug and play with other products that are best in class. So when we first created Side, we were looking at a traditional real estate transaction with all the paperwork, all the different things that have to go back and forth and be signed. And we calculated at that point in time that it took about 18 hours working on a single transaction to get it over the finish line, which might
Mhm.
not seem like a lot, but if you've got multiple transactions
Right, right.
going, and mind you, that's non-income producing activity. Like income
Mhm.
producing activity is you going showing houses, you meeting with folks, blah blah blah.
Mhm.
This is all back end office stuff. So
Mhm.
we created technology that is transaction, inception to close, the whole
Mhm.
transaction management system on a software. And then
Mhm.
from there, we said, well, what other things would a best in class realtor want and need? So we go
Mhm.
back and forth between, nice to have and need to have. And from there, we built on marketing suites and payment systems and um, automatically injecting forms. So we're in 18 different states. So each state has different forms, but all of our agents have access to current forms that are available to them. And so as we move forward and we add enhancements, we're taking real commentary from our community saying, hey, if you did this, it would save me this much more time. Or if you did this, this is how I could utilize that program to my benefit. So we keep adding on iterations on a regular
Mhm.
basis and enhancing, utilizing things like AI now, and how can we best use that tool to
Mhm.
give our folks time back. So our
Yeah.
ultimate goal is giving our community as much time back as we can give them, because
Yeah.
then they can do what they want. And sometimes it's make more clients, go do more deals. Other times it's spend it with the family,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
got I've got a team right now, the husband and wife are in France for a month. They've never been, but they've never been able to leave their business for a month. But
Right.
they're enjoying France for an entire month while their team runs their business. And That
Mhm.
it makes me happy.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. It's freedom. We all so many entrepreneurs start businesses for freedom, and what happens is they don't actually create freedom. They
Oh,
create an 80-hour a week job for themselves, right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love that story that they're getting to enjoy France and hopefully partaking in some amazing food.
Oh,
And
yeah. I keep seeing photos. I'm like, "Ooh, that looks really good."
bring back a piece of cheesecake for me, okay? No.
Right? Yeah.
Seriously, the best cheesecake I've ever had in Paris.
Oh,
Hands
really?
down. Oh my
Just the
gosh.
baguettes,
Yes.
yum.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I wanna ask you if we have anyone here who's watching this or listening to this, and perhaps she is an agent and she is thinking about stepping away from her brokerage and going out on her own, what words of wisdom would you have for her?
I think honestly, the to be very, very honest with yourself to answer the question of why, what are you trying to accomplish?
Mhm.
And be very clear that whatever that is, that's your North Star, whether it's building your own generational brokerage to hand down to your family, or because in your community you're providing a very unique niche. Um, but as long as you have that super clear and dialed in, everything else you can add on will be able to accomplish
Mm.
that. I think so many people, uh, think that they're doing it for reason A, but in reality, it's totally not. And that's where people hit pitfalls, right? They get bogged down by what it does take to start a business. It's not easy.
It's not
Otherwise,
easy.
everybody would do it.
Mhm, mhm.
But realistically, if you are super passionate about it, then you can accomplish it and find a mentor. Find
Mhm.
somebody who's done it before. Do not reinvent the wheel. There is no reason
Right,
to do it. You
right.
can you can make a better product. You can iterate on what somebody's done, but don't start from scratch. That's just silly.
Yeah. A mentor of mine once said, replicate before you iterate. So I love, obviously new ideas and optimizations and all the fun stuff, but by golly, do what works first
Yes.
and then try new things once it's working, right?
Right, right. And always iterate. Like if it's worked great for, 12 months, figure out where you can make it better.
Yeah. Amen. Love it. Okay. I want to move to a segment that has a few questions. And this segment is called the $1,000,000 moves. Okay. Because around here, we know success isn't just about money, it's about bold decisions, mindset shifts, and powerful pivots that change the game. So, Hillary, I want to ask you, what is $1,000,000 move you almost didn't make, but are glad you did?
Ooh, that's great. Great question. I would say moving back up to Central Oregon. So, in all honesty, I am in Central Oregon in a very tiny, tiny town outside of Bend called Sisters. It almost nobody knows where it is. But
Is it right
I
next
was
to Brothers?
no, well, it's very close to Brothers, actually. We do
Okay.
have brothers. Anyway, it's where I grew up, and our town is about 5,000 people. So I was in San Francisco, and the height of Silicon Valley, VC world, energy, everything modern, right? And we were living out by the beach in Half Moon Bay, and I mean, it was fine. I'm not complaining. It was great.
Yeah.
But we had the twins, pandemic, and nobody knew what was going to happen. And so we came up and spent a month in that summer up with my parents up here in Central Oregon. And everything just came flooding back as far as nostalgia and why this is such a special place, and can I work remote, and how can I make this work if I'm not in the center of my business, blah blah blah.
Mhm.
And it was literally just a gut decision, like, this is what we need to do.
Mhm.
We did. Sold that house, moved everything, bunch of shit hit the fan, and we made it work, and it is the best bloody decision that I have ever made because
Um,
kids are in a safe space. My kids are thriving. It is the community that I want my kids to grow up in, out in nature, not on screens, running around in the streets. Everybody
mhm.
is out for them. And the diversity of opinions are everywhere. And it is just the right thing to do. And I get to, run my business remotely. Thank God for technology. And I travel
Amen.
here and there, but nothing's fallen down, nothing's broken. It's actually
I want to ask you about that gut decision because, again, a lot of folks shy away from making
Mhm.
decisions utilizing their gut. And I do believe, obviously, we have to balance data and, in business, balance data and logic and all that kind of fun stuff. But we also need to leverage our intuition, right? Was it like loud and screaming for you, like beating down the door, Hillary, you've got to move? Or how did it show up?
I think okay, so folks that have women that have had children, it is this is best for my kids
Mhm,
and I will do anything to protect them.
mhm,
It was that mixed with if I die tomorrow, am I glad that I stayed in California or would I be glad that
mhm,
I moved to Oregon? And
mm,
it was the latter.
mm.
So I do a lot of decision making on if I'm going to die tomorrow
If you
scenarios. It
die
sounds so
tomorrow.
doomsday-ish. However, however, this goes back to my estate planning brain where it's like I use the example of getting hit by a muni bus in San Francisco because if you don't look, you might get hit by a bus. Uh, while crossing the road. But seriously, life is short. We have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. Stock
Mhm,
market crash, you get,
mhm.
unfortunately, you find a lump. I mean, anything can happen. This
Yeah.
world is crazy. You have no crystal ball. So, my point is that are you happy with the decisions you have made? Should you leave tomorrow?
Mhm, mhm,
And if the answer is no, then you need to change something.
mhm.
And I was
Amen.
not. I realize now, like, I didn't want to sit in a car for 2 hours a day in traffic. Want I wanted to be able to walk into town and get coffee and not worry about, you know, weird things going on.
Right? That's a polite way to say it. Um, okay, next question. What's $1 million move that didn't feel big at the time, but changed everything in hindsight?
Oh, that's a good question. I that would probably be leaving the law firm and kind of going the real estate route.
Mhm,
Um, I think just it didn't feel very, it was just like, "Oh, I'm gonna go and try this," like, no big deal. But that literally put me on that trajectory
yeah,
where now we're on like
yeah,
180 degrees from on the little pie chart away from each other dots.
yeah.
That was an interesting comment actually that I remember from a teacher in 6th grade, which was the geometry piece where one
Mhm.
decision and you push it out 10 years and look how far apart you are. So
Yeah,
those are interesting thought exercises to say little decision at the time, but
yeah.
way different life trajectory.
What a great comparison. I love your teachers.
I
I wish
know.
I had your teachers.
They're great. God love teachers. That's what I have to say about
Oh my
that. They
gosh.
should be paid
I
more.
They should absolutely be paid more. Absolutely. Okay, last question. What's $1 million move you see female entrepreneurs often overlooking, but could be a total game changer?
Applying for jobs that they don't feel qualified for. There are some
Mm,
statistics that I've read where I think men will apply for jobs if they see that they hit 25% of the criteria, where women err on the side of like 75%. So they're not applying for jobs that they would otherwise be qualified for just because the words in in the job description
mhm,
don't necessarily match with their skill set. So I think women need to push forward harder to get those jobs, to get into the C-suite, to get
Mhm.
those top level company jobs, if that is something you want. Obviously, don't do it if
Right.
that's not what you want. But
Yeah.
um, the fear factor, we need to set that aside.
Mhm. Amen. What great words to end on. Hilary, thank you so much for being here. If folks want to learn more about you or learn more about Side, what is the best place for them to find you online?
Our website is super easy. It's just side.com. You can email me. It's just Hilary@side.com. And then Instagram is Hill Hedemark, my maiden name. But if you Google me, I think you could find it.
Love it. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.